There we go. All right. Yeah, so did we go through the final assignment? No? We should do that then. So, there we go. So, assignment 4 is due on, I believe, the last day of class. The last day of class being next Friday. Let's take a look. August 8th, that's right. So, because, yes. Did you folks get the announcement? Hopefully you got the announcement about the due date for assignment 3. There we go. So, assignment 4 is due the last day of classes. I generally disable late days when the due date is the last day of classes, just because, I really, really despise assignment deadlines that fall inside of exam week. And I imagine probably you all do too. When it's exam week, the thing that you should be thinking about is your exams and nothing else. Here, at this institution, we only have 1 week for exam week. Out at McMaster, where I used to teach, they used to give us 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks to get through all the exams, right? So you could be off class December 7th and not have an exam until the 20th. And it was, that gives you some time to study, but here you don't really have much time to study. So basically, at the suggestion of one of your esteemed colleagues, the late days, which you can't use for assignment 4, you can use for assignment 3. I'm extending the extension on the due date according to late days. You still have to have the late days to spend, but I think that means that the absolute last day for submissions is today, actually, Thursday. So if you haven't gotten assignment 3 in yet, please do so ASAP. So let's talk about assignment 4 then. So, database-powered front end. Big bold letters. Remember that the database must be installed on CS Unix for your code to work properly. You may have to change your source code credentials in order for this to work, if your XAMPP credentials are using default values. Well, yes. You will have to port your code from XAMPP, your local development environment, to the production server. This is, in fact, a crucial step that people who actually develop these sorts of things for a living have to do. So, here you go. Do something that you'd have to do for a job for this assignment, please. Basically, I'm probably, I kind of get the feeling that I'm kind of preaching to the choir a little bit, given the people classroom right now, but like, if your assignment 4 does not connect to the SQL database on CS Unix, when it's up on CS Unix, nothing will load, nothing will look good. I will get a mostly blank screen, which I will then proceed to give like a, you know, a 10 or a 20% to, because like, it's an assignment about databases. If you can't connect to the database, that, for me, that's kind of in the same category as a syntax error, you know? Pardon me. Don't submit a Java assignment with a syntax error, and don't submit a databases assignment where the thing doesn't even connect to the database. Right? That's the one thing you gotta get working. So, yes. This one is probably going to be familiar to some of you. It's essentially an infinite scrolling web page full of quotes from people. Don't look too carefully about who it is that wrote all of these quotes, because there are some real stinkers in here. Like Aesop, oh my goodness, that guy. So basically, the idea, like, once again, you're given the front end code, but the basic idea is there is a database, an SQL file that you will have to import into your SQL database on CS Unix, otherwise the data isn't there. That's another essential step. The general idea is that you have a number of these quotes which have been loaded. You generate those little divs to populate the page with, but that the page gives the impression of an infinite scroll, when in fact only about 30 of the maybe 30 or 50 of these quotes are loaded at a time. You can tell this. Note this the scroll bar on the side, right? If you scroll down, get close to the bottom, and oh, there we go. It just loaded the next set, right? There you go. And boop, boop, boop. And if you scroll fast enough, you can't really get to the bottom. You can see a couple of them pop in at the bottom. Make sense? So far, so good? This one shouldn't take you too much time. So, you are even given the code for these little cards that you can use. Question?
Can we use like the code from the sample lectures? Like for like a PDO?
Yeah, like the code we've done in class? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. The one thing you can't do is use code from a previous submission you may or may not have made to this same assignment in a previous semester. Although, honestly, like with this one, the actual code you have to write is so dang simple, like, it would be hard to tell with this one, right? Like, honestly, could probably get this done in 30 lines of code. So, Your script will output a JSON encoded array of these cards to the AJAX call. You should be returning a maximum of 20 quotations at a time. You may hard code them. You will need a way to skip quotations that are on previous pages. The formula pages -1 times limit should help. Similarly, you will need a query in order to retrieve the information from the database. The query's been removed. So you have to write a select query, right? All PHP code should use best practices, sanitization, filtering, etc. Assignments that do not use the required PDO format will be graded 0. Use the PDO, or else. Question 2. Extend the functionality of the result of question 1 by adding an author filter and favorite quote button. If the get parameter action is set to authors, query the database and return a JSON encoded array of the unique author names and ID numbers. The SQL query. Now, just a moment here. Did someone leave an incomplete version of this up here? Give me just a moment. Let me just.
I also noticed while working on that, if you name your PHP A4, it doesn't register. You have to name it quotes.php when I was running it last night.
Really?
Yeah, because it said couldn't find quotes.php, so I assumed somewhere in the JavaScript it's calling on quotes and not A4.
Oh boy.
I think
Any further issues like that with this assignment, please send me an email about it at any time. I will. Alright, let's see here, where are we?
I took a look too, it just feels like the entire front end package is incomplete.
Yeah.
Mine is, there's like, this is normal syntax, and it's giving us syntax. It bugs out.
yeah, it was quite odd because when I ran it, it's like can't find quotes.php. I'm like, okay. And then I change it and it runs perfectly fine.
Well, it must be looking through the JavaScript.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I also figured out an issue with the I was using was trying to optimize it. So there's something called match function. It's kind of like having statements, but without them. That's in the new version of PHP. And it's not supported by what
Okay. I'm gonna have to give this thing a read through once I get back to the office. I'm pretty sure that this question 2 calls for modification of the front end. Adding a favorite quote button. Oh, I see. No, like within the.
I remember this from last time.
Yeah. So the favorite quote button is what it means is there's a button on each of these cards that you can click to remember favorite quotes. Okay, I'll give this thing a read through because, clearly there's some placeholder text.
Okay.
So. Alright. Question.
If it's the same as the last semester's assignment, there's a couple of things missing, like there's no user sign in and stuff like that.
Yeah, there is, and I did notice that.
Yeah, it's
Looks like a
This
dumbed
is-
down version.
this is the it's one iteration down from the one that was run in the fall semester, actually. It was determined in the fall semester that it was a bit simple, so a username was added. Although the username didn't really work all that well.
No, it's very
you know?
It works sometimes and then it doesn't work.
Yeah, alright. I'll take a look and I'll clean this up, but I won't add anything to it. It'll just be what you see before you. Alright. Any other questions about assignment 4? Alright, so. So let's talk a little bit more about REST APIs. So REST stands for Representational State Transfer. A good way of thinking about REST APIs is that you're taking some form of database and you are providing an HTTP interface to that database more directly than you normally do. More directly because you're not having to go through a web page and web forms, you're just kind of querying the database more or less directly. Of course, we still have our server middleware layer. It's still checking for logins and security, checking to make sure the requests are from valid users, all of this fun stuff, right? But we're not necessarily obsessed with the idea that we are sending web pages back. Often we're just sending data in a general sense. So, when making a remote API call using an HTTP request, the client sends information in the following way. So information can be encoded in A, the path of the URL. This is what we were doing when we used server request URI, exploded it on slash, and extracted the particular parameters. That's what we were doing. Through the choice of the request method. So, again, if you remember from last class, we had a matchup between different request types and different CRUD operations, right? This is what that's getting at. In the body of the request, often JSON encoded, so the body of the request itself can contain data, and in query parameters, for example, get parameters. So, accessing a request's body is something we should probably talk about. I should show you how to do that. Query parameters, for this purpose, I will include post parameters as query parameters. We already know how to read post parameters. So, additionally, the server has two main ways of communicating information back to the client under a REST API framework. The first is the body of the HTTP response, which again is often JSON encoded. This should not be a surprise. And, you know, this is something we know how to parse on the client side from our work with AJAX queries, right? The AJAX response, this is what we're talking about, But this final one, using the HTTP response code to indicate success or failure, and other conditions, right? So, let's do that one first, actually. I feel like doing that one first because it's a little simpler. It's a good like warm up. So, this is good practice not just for REST APIs, this is good practice in general. It's not something we've really talked about much so far in the class, unless Steve was talking about it in the first half. I know I haven't really been talking about it. Your HTTP response status codes. So, as we all know, response status codes are used by a server to indicate how was this packet processed, did any errors occur. I'm sure all of you have received error 500 plenty over the course of this semester. Does anybody know what error 500 is?
Internal server error?
Internal server error, that's right. If your PHP script borks hard enough to not even be runnable at all, you'll end up with a 500 error, indicating internal server error. Other sort of nominal codes include 200, which means everything went all right. 200 is kind of your standard default response code. 201, the resource has been successfully created. 204, no content. Everything went great, but I have no data for you. For example, delete and put, right? If you're deleting an entry, it's like, yes, this succeeded, but you know, I don't really have anything to show you aside from a success message. 400 is a bad request. Something went wrong with the request. Maybe the URL was malformed or the query parameter was missing or incorrectly formatted. If you get a 400, then this should only occur in very early alpha prototypes of things. You should be able to fix this quickly. 401, unauthorized. You are not permitted to do that. Of course, everybody knows and loves 404. What is 404? Unfound, yes. We did not find the thing you were trying to find. There's another one sort of in the middle here. Does anybody know what 403 is? Forbidden. Forbidden, yes. 403 forbidden is it's what you get when you try to access a region of a web page that requires like credentials and you don't give them or they're wrong. So, for example, yes.
What's the difference between unauthorized and forbidden?
So, these are a little bit loose, but here's my answer.
Okay.
Unauthorized is you're trying to do something you're not allowed to do, like you're trying to perform an action you're not allowed to perform. So, for example, if you tried to like drop the credentials tables, drop the credentials table from the SQL database, and you didn't have enough permission to do so, you're unauthorized. Whereas a 403 forbidden is like, you don't even have enough permission to view this, let alone send me any requests of that nature. So like,
Is it stricter?
yeah, you like, in the course so far, when we've talked about people being authorized, right, we've treated that like a Boolean, right? You're either a logged in user or you're not. But in any real system of any complexity, you will have different types of users. And those different types of users will have, you know, they'll have different levels of privilege, right? Like imagine that this is like a bank, right? You as a user of the bank, you can perform this, that, and the other thing on your bank account, right? But you can't just like, for example, arbitrarily add funds to your bank account, much as you would like to be able to, right? However, there would be somebody, probably fairly high-ranking in the organization, who does have that ability. And this is the type of person who would have to, like, you know, when you know how you can get that type of insurance against account fraud,
Oh yeah.
right? Insurance against account fraud assumes that somewhere in the organization there is someone that has the arbitrary power to add and remove funds from bank accounts, right? So that is an extremely high level of privilege, right? If I, a normal customer of the bank, attempted that operation that's reserved for that person, that would be an unauthorized, right? But if I had no account with the bank at all, and I attempted to do anything at all, I'd get a 403 forbidden.
Okay, I see.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Cool. Yeah, they're like, you get these like complicated matrices of like who's got permission to do what. GitLab is a good example of this. If you don't know what GitLab is, it's kind of like, it's a little bit like GitHub, except it's like you host your own local GitHub kind of thing. Come on. Yeah, here you go. This is precisely what I wanted. So in GitLab, you can add people to a GitLab project under various permission levels, right? GitLab recognizes guest, planner, reporter, developer, maintainer, and owner. This matrix gives who has permission to do what. Everyone has the ability to view insights, insight charts, issue analytics, contribution analytics, and value stream analytics, all of which are things I have no idea what those actually are, right? Productivity analytics, you have to be a reporter or higher. Same for DevOps adoption and metrics dashboard annotations. And managing metrics dashboard annotations is something where you have to be a developer or higher. And you can imagine like another thing that's really like normally, like a normal really good example of like managed permissions. Even in a two-tier system where you have something like only like owner and developer, or like owner and guest or something, right? Normally it requires admin privileges to give out admin privileges, right? Assigning admin privileges is not something you should allow just a general person on the project to be able to do, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So, there we go. So, if you'd like the full reference on HTTP status codes, here you are. There you go. Again, some of these are a little vague, right? you read the docs, it says, although the HTTP standard specifies unauthorized, semantically this response means unauthenticated. That is, the client must authenticate itself to get the requested response. 402 is payment required. 403 is forbidden. The client does not have access rights to the content, that is, it is unauthorized, so the server is refusing to give the requested resource. Unlike 401 unauthorized, the client's identity is known to the server. Oh, interesting, okay, so I actually got it the reverse of what I thought it was. So 401 is the one where you're not even the client of the bank. 403 is you're at least a client, but you don't have permission to access the thing you're trying to access. Oh man, read the docs, am I right? Use the source. And of course, everybody's favorite, 418, I'm a teapot. The server refuses to attempt to brew coffee with a teapot. And of course, there's also HTTP cats, which are, did I show you guys this already?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. All of these are all of your HTTP. You can, like, you want to know the fun thing? This is actually also a REST API, which means you can, like, you can fetch a status cat image from this server and put it into your web page based on, like, what status you get from it. So, there you go. Good. So we should learn how to set that. It's very simple. It's just that one line. HTTP response code, and then you set the number. Right? So, let's load up our system that we've been working on from previously, and let's see what some useful status codes would be.
Your student.
Oh, it's true. I have elevated privilege levels. Not very elevated privilege levels. Oh, one other thing while I'm on the topic. I posted some study material to the modules, some practice problems. If you go down, scroll, and you go to final exam, you'll find all of these documents, which, you know, if you're looking for some practice problems, there you go. Alright, let's see here. Alright. Exam didn't actually load. Try again. That's not useful. There we go. Now. Oh, and I think I figured out the problem. I think if you put the slash in there, it should fix it. Wait, is it backslash or forward slash? Would be forward slash. It's not backslash. What am I even thinking? Backslash. What is this, Windows? Good grief. So, let's see here. Are you running? It would help if you were running, wouldn't it? Gotta load the database. Y-O-Y-O-Y. There we go. Import our lovely little. Ooh, I wonder if I. We may have to reconstruct the posts table. Ah. There we go. So, register a new user, ASDF, 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 ASDF. Ah. Strange. Okay, let's see here. All this stuff is still in there. There's an HT access which is directing things up here. Let's just get rid of all of this. Let's just get rid of all of that. Like that, like that, like that. Alright, let's try again. Huh? Let's try. There we go. My goodness. just get things into the root folder then. Ah, yeah, I think I understand what the problem was. So, basically, the problem with all of this was, when I developed this, I kind of modified it so that the thing was hanging out in the root folder of the server, which is, honestly, probably what you want, right? Like, we're kind of like, the days are swiftly coming to a close of like the mega server with all kinds of like nested tabs and structures due to like the increasing prevalence of containerization and like small virtual machines. Things are definitely moving towards a more like, I almost want to call them micro server type approach. So really, like, you probably, like, this is probably more correct and current to just have, like, one thing hanging out like this, right? But, you know. Undefined offset too. Since I've done that, I need to fix the code a little bit. Again, this is like, all of this is, what? Why would user account control? Good grief. Alright. We want index. We want to change that to a 1. There we go. Try again. You're loading. Stop. There we go. Why am I now not getting a response? Okay. Okay, that seemed to work. Can I log in? Yes. Yes. Good. Yes, posts. I don't think we have a posts table, so. Throw that up there quickly. Well, it doesn't really matter. Not for the time being. So, so let's consider the registration script, right? We are creating a new entry. We should give an HTTP status code that represents what we are attempting to do. For now, it's a good rule to try to make sure that no matter how your program exits, you are manually setting your HTTP response code, even if you're setting it to default. Right? So, let's take a look at our HTTP response codes. We've got response codes. 201 looks like a good candidate. Created. Right? So, in our PHP, and this is probably something you would do in the model. Model. Well, except that the model shouldn't talk to the... Yes, okay. So, the way that our system is currently working, if an error occurs during the execution of a model function, we write the error field into the TPL. Just to remind us of that, here we go. Something like this. Error is true. We can use that to set, to decide what status we should set after the model function has finished executing. Now, you could also say, but Mr. Professor, sir, we could also just set the HTTP response code in the model itself. What would prevent us from doing so? Well, dear friends and colleagues, remember what the purpose of the model is versus what the purpose of the controller is. The controller is supposed to have all interaction with the incoming and outgoing packets, right? So, the model isn't really supposed to deal with the outgoing packet directly, right? I would argue that to put your HTTP statics code inside of your model, even though that would be a little more convenient, that would be a violation of MVC architecture. A minor violation, but a violation nevertheless. Make sense? So, we can drop something in here. If is set template array at error, and it's equal true. Maybe it's set and false, who knows. HTTP, what's it called again? What's it called? HTTP response code. (201). Or no, sorry, that's in success. If it's an error, then we've had some kind of SQL problem. On success, it's a 201. Once again, let's look at our status codes and see if there's one that fits the bill. So we're looking at error messages. There we go. Although, I think we're probably in 500 territory. So, yes, we certainly would be. So, here's the difference between the 400 series and the 500 series response codes. 400 is when the client has messed things up. 500 is when the server has messed things up. It should be theoretically impossible for the client to provide credentials so bad that that they mess up the SQL query. For one thing, we should be sanitizing and filtering things so that that can't happen, right? Because if they can break the SQL query, they can also break into the SQL query, right? So, let's take a look at our server response errors. We have internal server error, which is a good candidate actually. Not implemented, okay. Bad gateway, service unavailable, gateway timeout, HTTP version not supported. Yeah, I actually think 500 is what we want for this one. We give a 500 response code, internal server error. The only reason this would really happen is if we somehow messed up the query when we were writing our server code, or another way this could happen was if our PHP script failed to connect to the database. We didn't handle that correctly, and it managed to find its way to, requesting to a database that didn't exist in the first place, right? So, let's throw down a 500 right there. Does that make sense? Does it make sense what we're doing? Unrecognized operation, that's another one that, we could figure out pretty quickly. An unrecognized operation, which is requested, what series of response code should that be? What should the first number be? To answer that question, if we get an unrecognized operation error, is that operation coming from the client or the server? It's coming from the client, yes. Errors which originate in data that's from the client, those are 400 series errors. So, 400 series errors. In this case, I would be an advocate for a 418. I'm a teapot. If the requested operation is incorrect, what that means is basically probably the user has tried to, has been messing around with the URL and is trying to enter commands that don't exist. They are attempting to brew coffee in a teapot. So, give that a 418. But you can see how, there's a certain degree of subjectivity in this process. All of these codes are used by convention, right? There's no internet police that's gonna come around to your door and say, oi, 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 you got a license for that status code? It's not a thing that happens, right? So, read the docs, be familiar with what you're using, but make your best, take your best guess about what the, what the status code, like how it applies to your particular situation, right? There will be common conventions, but you'll sometimes find yourself in situations where you don't really think any of them apply really, right? In which case you just have to make an educated guess or pick one that's general. Make sense? Kind of like the situation we were in with 500. So, does that make sense? Any questions about HTTP status codes? All good? All right. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So, request bodies. So, again, going back to client side, we have a certain degree of familiarity with the idea of a request body. When we're making a regular plain old HTTP request for an index page of something or another, we are loading a file as the body of that packet. When we send post parameters using an AJAX query, the method that we used way back in client side was to attach the parameters, attach the data inside of the body of the AJAX request, and then set the header telling the server how to interpret it. If you remember, it was like headers, content type, x www URL form encoded, that line that went into the AJAX query. So, sometimes the body is not encoded as URL parameters. Sometimes the body is not encoded at all. Sometimes it's just plain text. So it's useful to be able to read that information, which is honestly kind of shocking that we haven't done this so far. So I'm going to start a new example. This is going to require a little bit of JavaScript programming, so please bear with me. Oh, by the way, next week is review. So bring your review questions. I'll be happy to work through some problems with you. We'll do a review of the whole course, not just, selected pieces and the whole course if we have time. But I will, of course, prioritize whatever people want to review. So, let's make let's see here. Let's save index.html. Take a little HTML page, just a small one. I care so little I'm not even going to externalize my JavaScript. Ha! So, we're going to, I'm going to encapsulate this as this in a function. There we go. But this is going to send an AJAX request to the server attaching some content. So, let's fetch content.php. There we go. Data gets data.text. Response gets response dot gets console.log response. Because we're going to be sending data to the server, the method should be post. But we won't set any other parameters for now. There. Everybody can see that? Okay. So, now let's write content.php. The purpose of this, this is basically going to be like a, we're going to start this off as like a slightly more complicated echo, kind of hello world type example. Then we might do something with it a little more interesting. So, let's make content.php. For now, let's just make it a hello world. What do I call this function again? Request. Content is not defined, huh? Oh. Well, that's true. That's true. I forgot the quotes. Whack whack. Gets me every time. There we go. We're hearing hello world back. So far, so good. We got the hello world working. So, what I'd like to do, I'd like to take a parameter into this function, send that information in the body of this HTTP request to the server, then have the server do something with it. Create a variable called content. Body gets content. Now, let's just run that to make sure that it works, make sure there's no syntax errors. There we go. And now we can say something like, this is content. We're still getting hello world back, but that's because our PHP script doesn't know how to receive the body yet. Make sense? So for our PHP script then, so this is absolutely particular to PHP servers. Other servers will have different places of storing this information, but the way that you get at it in PHP is using file get contents php://input. So let's take a look-see. Let content equal, or wait, let, what am I thinking? What is this? JavaScript, content, file get contents, PHP input. Echo content. So what this should do is read the content of PHP input, which should be the body, echoing that then back to the client. Let's take a look. Ta-da! We hear back, this is content. Anything that we say here is echoed by the server. There you go. Make sense? So far, so good? Good. Now, content type is important. All right? Most of the time, we've been kind of slightly avoiding the issue so far. It's the sort of thing that, until you're talking about sending different types of content in the body, you don't really, it's not really necessary to talk about it quite so much. Sort of thus far, how we've configured things is we have this kind of handshaking agreement between the client and the server. It's like, I know the response to this type of request is going to be JSON, so I'm going to configure the AJAX to take JSON. It's like, okay, that works if you're developing both the client and the server, right? But if you're not developing both the client and the server, you can actually attach what the content type is to the packet itself. So let's examine how to do that from both ends. Starting here. So content type is something that exists in the header, right? Content type. And essentially here, what you want is a MIME type. You guys, you've heard of MIME types? Yeah. Basically what a MIME type is it's a string representation of a file type. They're sort of similar to and overlapping in concept with file extensions, but they're not quite the same thing as a file extension, though it's a related concept. there you go. Media or MIME types, there you go. They even here have a mapping between file extensions and MIME types. So if you just Control F your file extension, .txt, that would be text/plain. For JSON, you're looking at application/JSON. JS is text/JavaScript. You can see there's a lot of them here. For now though, let's go with .txt because that's what we are sending. Text/plain. There we go. So, let's go back here, reload the page, get our network tab up and running, make the request, there we go, and we can see that in our request, our content type is set to text plain. Now, this is not particularly impressive as this is the default value, right? But let's keep it there for now, and let's do the server's response. So you can configure the server to respond differently depending on what the incoming type of the data is, in the same way that you can configure it to respond differently depending on whether you're getting a get or a post or a delete or a put request, right? You can even do this with a switch. What we need to do now is we need to read what the header is. Yes, that's how you set it in PHP, of course. But we also need to know how to read it. Yeah. About where I expected it to be. Well, for now, before we start using it for logic, let's view it to see that we're correct. There you go. So it's also including information about the character set, which is fair enough. So we'll have to split that off before we proceed further. Explode on semicolon this stuff, and we are interested in the 0th attribute. So let's test that. Yep, text/plain. So we can switch on that now. Case text/plain. Make sense? All of this stuff if plain text, echo it. Make sense? And of course, we have now the client sending to the server what the content type is. We should now have the server send back to the client what the content type is. And the way you do that is using the header function. The header function allows you to set parameters in the header. It's a general mechanism. You can set like anything in the header using this. But where are we here? We want to set content type as text/plain. There we go. So something interesting happens when your browser receives content type text plain from, if that gets attached to the message and that request originated from the URL, right? It's trying to load a page. Then your browser will view it differently. It'll like put it in a mono-spaced font. It's a little interesting. Save. Ooh. Save. So is echoed by the server. There we go. If we take a look at the content, the network traffic here, payload is echoed by the server. Response headers, you can see, content type plain text is what's being sent. Very good. So far, so good. Any questions? Not really? Everybody's working on their assignments? Yeah. So now, let's adapt this system, have it handle JSON data. So, sending JSON data looks very similar to sending other data of other types. The content type is application/JSON. That has to be updated as well. But other than that, that's all we need. We're expecting to see JSON back again, so there you go. Now, of course, it'll be useful to have a predefined JSON string so we don't have to type it out each time. JSON data, let's say, bananas 5. What's a fruit? Give me a fruit.
Apple.
Apple 10. I need another fruit.
Kiwi.
Kiwi 20. I need another fruit.
Avocado.
Avocado 40. And what's a fruit with cucumber. Most people don't think it's a fruit, but it's actually a fruit. A fruit is technically and botanically defined as a thing that contains seeds. So, even though it's used as a vegetable, it is in fact a fruit. So, if we go back to our web page and we perform a JSON request, loading the JSON data, object is not valid JSON. That's right. That's true. So let's look at our, still sending text plain. Did I misspell it? That dang and blast. Headers, content type. Headers, there we go. That's better. There we go. That's the responses text HTML, which by the way is the default response type from the PHP script. But you can see that our content type that we are sending is application JSON. Very good. You can see that we're getting unrecognized format, which is not a valid JSON string, which is true. If we go to our content, basically we need to add a case for application/JSON. Now with this, we could do something like content, get file contents, JSON, decode. Remember, you gotta set true after that. Content, I don't know. Content at Apple plus equals 100. Echo JSON encode content, set the header, break, content type will be application/JSON, there we go. We got a syntax error, my friends. But you can see when you set the content type differently, you get a different little icon here in your network traffic, which is kind of cool. It's like, oh yeah, this is JSON data. There you go. Undivided index Apple. Well, let's see about that. Oh boy. So here's a fun little thing about JavaScript. Take a look at what we were sending the server. Object, object. But it's a JSON object. Why? That should string convert fine, right? No. Unfortunately. This is what you get if you fail to convert your JSON to a string before you send it. So in the JavaScript, you need to use my absolute most hated method name of all time, JSON.dumps, or dump string. That is the equivalent of toString in this accursed environment. What? It's not a function. Come on. Is it capitalized or something? Come on. Stringify. Oh, that's in Python. Okay, Python, you're an idiot. Stringify isn't any better though. Stringify. Stupid. Stupid name for a method. There we go. Try it again. Hey, hey! And there we go. The apple's value has increased by 100. That modification was made by the server.
Why?
Hmm?
Why?
But,
Like, we didn't set it to, I think we set it to 10, right?
we did,
So why did the server increase it by 100?
because I told it to. So, you're absolutely right. When we encoded the JSON data initially, Apple had a value of 10. On the server, if the received data type is application JSON, we take the content of the file, decode it, set the content, set the Apple value to plus equals 100, set the outgoing content type to application JSON, echo JSON encode content, and there you go. So that's why Apple was 100 more, is because that's what we did. Now, content type it's important, but it's still just kind of an agreement, right? You can take JSON data, encode it as plain text, encode it on one side, decode it on another side, and everything will work. But you're kind of not documenting things quite the way they should be in order for other developers to understand what it is you're trying to do. Does that make sense? Any questions? All right. You guys wanted me to just leave you alone so you can work on your assignments?
exactly.
So, there are a couple of exercises at the bottom of this, which, if you're looking for more stuff to practice on for the exam, because this material is covered on the exam, this would be another source for stuff you can use to practice. So, it's important to know how these tables are laid out, right? Generally, you will receive a method type, a URL, and a description of what that operation is supposed to be. So in this particular case, it's again another sort of Twitter resembling thing, right? You've got twits all and twits user ID. Notice that this one has a colon, right? The colon indicates that this is a variable, right? And you can probably get that from the name too, but the idea is when you actually use this, the actual physical URL you'll be processing might be something like twits/1037842432, some user ID, or that would be a user number, twits/ put your username here, right? King of Balatro 77 or something, right? With when you're processing the URL, you split this out, right? You say, okay, if the first argument here, which actually ends up being the second argument once you split on slashes, right? If the first argument here is twits, and then the second one is all, and this is a get method, I do this thing. This description will tell you what model functions are required for you to call, right? In this case, retrieve all tweets in the table. That should tell you what kind of, what kind of select query are we doing? Select star from table, no where clause, right? We're getting everything. Should return a JSON encoded array with ID, user ID, and text for each tweet. So, in contrast to our MVC architecture example that we had been working through, in this case, you're not getting a web page that embeds the data. You're just getting the data itself encoded as raw JSON output. Make sense? This one, get twits from user ID, retrieve all tweets, should say twits, from the given user ID. So this is the same query, but we're now using where to filter, where user ID is equal to whatever that thing is, right? Once again, never trust the client. Anything appearing here needs to be filtered. Anything received from the body of an HTTP packet should also be filtered and sanitized. In this case, retrieve all tweets from the given user ID. Should return a JSON encoded array with the ID and text of each twit. So, yes, Basically, the output is the same, but the, what the particular SQL query is that you're sending to the database, that varies depending on how the URL is received. Does that make sense? Good. In this exercise, once you've done that, you also can put the following in there as well. Post, delete, and put, which allows you to add a new tweet to the table for user ID, delete a tweet by its ID, and delete and put a tweet, change the text of them, right? So you can see that like for these four, there's actually like not much to tell them apart from the URL alone. You need the method type as well in order to determine what function you're supposed to be doing, right? A well-designed API has all of those cases being mutually exclusive, right? There should never be any ambiguity, right? You should never have like two entries in the table use the same method and use the same URL. Otherwise it's ambiguous. How is the server supposed to select which function you need, right? Hopefully that's something that gets taught at the design stage. Does that make sense? Any questions? I don't think I have anything else to say. I could talk about Node.js for 10 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah? Okay.
Before
Yeah.
that, you mentioned that you would try to talk to the school about switching PHP for Node.js, since it's not really,
Well, so it's not that like absolutely nobody uses PHP anymore, right? Like there's like programming languages never really die. There's enough legacy code out there in PHP that like there will always be a reason to learn it, right? But overwhelmingly, like, let me show you a quick graph. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for. So this is a 2023 survey, and it's a little small, but this is a graph that I used to support the change to Node.js. This blue line is Apache servers. This is market share of active sites. The number of websites on the internet that use one type of server versus another. This is Apache, right? You can see Microsoft made a play for the market, but they kind of just dropped off. They realized they weren't making any money, I guess, and now almost nobody uses Microsoft servers. Stuff like Nginx, getting quite popular. Cloudflare is this orange one, right? Google has been fairly, they've been kind of holding steady. What's interesting here is like this other category, and basically what other is it's like various small cloud platform providers, right? I don't know, maybe AWS is in there, but you can see that over time, the general trend for Apache servers has been they've been tanking, right? Not to mention, somewhere around here, containers get invented. Probably that jump right there, actually. Somewhere in here, containers get invented. People realize, oh wait, you can actually run an Apache server inside of a container and put it on the cloud. So your server can be an Apache server, but it doesn't have to be running on an Apache server, right? We can disconnect the operating system from, the hardware, which is cool. But yeah, so basically, it's just like Node is the thing. Node is the thing that's used now. Another good one is the Stack Overflow developer survey. Stack Overflow developers survey. Oh, is the 2025 out? Is it out? Oh. 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 Okay, cats and kittens, this is the freshest data. This data is less than a month old. Ooh. Okay. Most popular programming languages right now. JavaScript. And let me tell you, that is not exclusively that's not just front end JavaScript. That'll be back end JavaScript in that category too. I would just like to point out this one, TypeScript, which is now if you don't count HTML and CSS or SQL, which is true, right? And if you don't count Bash shell scripting, which, probably shouldn't consider that proper programming languages. Bloody TypeScript is now the third most popular programming language. Proper programming language. JavaScript, Python, TypeScript. Learn TypeScript. Yes?
Difference.
Between JavaScript and TypeScript?
Yes.
You know how JavaScript is awful and its errors don't make any sense? TypeScript is JavaScript with types. It's so the way it works is you write this is secondhand information. I've never actually written a TypeScript program yet. I plan to, but I just haven't had the time. You write a TypeScript program. It compiles to JavaScript. You put that in your browser and it runs. So it adds a compilation step between you developing your code and pulling it into JavaScript, or pulling it into the browser, because unfortunately, JavaScript is what the browser supports, right? There's nothing else that the browser supports. But TypeScript, the aim of TypeScript is to fix JavaScript and make it good and easy to work with. Make it more like Java, basically. So, and basically the story of the last 5 years has been the meteoric rise of TypeScript. The LAMP stack? That's the one we've been learning, right? Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP / Perl, right? That's the one that we've been learning. The sort of more modern one is MERN, right? It's MongoDB, Express, React, and Node, right? That's the MERN stack. The MERN stack is quite popular. But guess what? There's a new stack on the block, kids. The triple T stack. TypeScript, running on TypeScript, running on TypeScript, right? Because React, Node, and vanilla JavaScript, client-side JavaScript, those are all JavaScript. TypeScript compiles to JavaScript, so TypeScript, you can write TypeScript and have it compile to a Node backend as well. So the triple T stack is something that's Like that's something that's new and interesting, it's the new craze, because everybody loves TypeScript, because JavaScript is so awful. People love TypeScript proportionally to how awful JavaScript is. Databases don't really care, Postgres is, yeah, good. Holy cannoli, all right, that was 50% last year. Okay, Docker was at 50% last year, and now it's at 70%, so learn Docker. Amazon Web Services, that's interesting. Anybody know what NPM is?
Node Package Manager.
Node Package Manager. Anybody know what pip is?
Python.
Just describe what it is. The Python,
It's used for unit testing Python.
yeah, it's also its package manager.
Oh.
So, yeah, so the Node Package Manager, the Python Package Manager, Amazon Web Services, that kind of surprises me. But, yeah, Kubernetes is for organizing containers, right? Docker Compose is also kind of in that category. That thing's gone up a few points since last year. I think last year it was at 45%, now it's at 48.7, something like that. I'm recalling these numbers from memory, but Node.js, web frameworks and technologies. This includes front-end frameworks. React, you might be saying, oh, well, why would you pick React? Why would you pick Node, or like, why would you pick Node over React? Who can tell me what React is?
It's a library.
It's a front-end framework.
Front-end framework.
Yeah, so React is a front-end framework, Node is a back-end framework, so technically they're in different categories, they don't compete with each other. Right?
Yes.
So, like, if you want, and look, humble jQuery is in third place, that's hilarious. Express, that's a back-end framework for Node, right? I guess the next thing that's like actually a back-end framework would be ASP.NET, maybe?
I thought that would be hard.
Yeah. Django. Oh, look at that, that's Laravel, that's the PHP framework. Yeah. I can't remember if Angular is front end or back end. I guess it doesn't really matter because React and Node are eating everybody's lunch at the moment. Most popular IDE is Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio probably hurting from no longer supporting Mac. Third place is Notepad++. That's funny. Vim is in fifth place. Oh goodness gracious. Yeah, basically this is the marketplace now that Microsoft killed Atom. But if you want to, you know, if you wanted an IDE, there you go. Who's the most popular large language model? There you go. Code documentation and collaboration tools. GitHub is at 81%. Overwhelmingly dominant. There you go. Computer operating systems. Oh man. Hey, there you go. Apparently 17% of devs are on just Linux. Ooh, Ubuntu. I bet that includes Ubuntu derivatives. It's got to include Ubuntu derivatives, right? But anyway. Yeah, so there you go, 10 minutes on industry trends then. Question?
So, learn TypeScript, Python, Docker, Node.js, and GitHub.
Yes. Also, React.
Yeah.
Because you should have a back-end framework and a front-end framework. You've used React before, right?
Yeah, I had to teach myself React because my professor didn't, it shouldn't have been a prompt. But yeah, React's very fun. It definitely refines the knowledge you need for back-end development.
Hmm.
I just